Hello, is this Julian Vance? Great news. Your study abroad application has been approved. Our agency will handle everything from here on out. You just need to show up at the university in a month, the voice from the education center said cheerfully. A faint smile finally touched Julian Vance's lips. It was the only good thing that had happened to him lately. After a brief chat, he hung up the phone. He turned around to find Claire Sterling standing right behind him. Who was that? What university? When did this happen? She fired off a series of questions, her tone stiff, her expression unhappy. Julian tried to brush it off. It was just about the kids from the group home and their school stuff. Did you need something? Claire's brow furrowed slightly, her eyes scanning him as if trying to gauge the truth in his words. It's not a big deal, she said. I just wanted to say that what happened today with Leo was just a rehearsal. He's young, so don't take it to heart. A rehearsal? Julian let out a cold snort. A rehearsal that was broadcast live in front of all those people and ended up trending online? You expect me to believe that? Julian, I came all this way to explain this to you, and this is the only time I'm going to. Claire's voice suddenly turned icy, her face hardening. You'd better get a clear sense of your place. Her every word was like an icicle stabbing into his heart. He fought to keep the pain from spreading, lifting his eyes to meet hers directly. Claire was taken aback for a moment, a strange flicker of panic in her heart. She had never seen Julian look at her with such calm, cold eyes. But she quickly suppressed the unusual feeling, reverting to her usual self. Seeing that he remained silent, Claire surprisingly found a bit more patience. She took a step closer, gently taking Julian's hand, her tone tinged with helplessness. Jules, why are you competing with Leo? He just launched his career, he needs the exposure. This rehearsal was a bit. She paused, as if searching for the right words. While she was trying to figure out how to defend Leo Chen, Julian had already pulled his hand away. You know perfectly well what you two did. Using your own wedding to generate hype for someone else. You're a truly dedicated fiancé. And as for him being young, Julian curled his lip. Did you forget? He's only a year younger than us. With that, he turned and went back to his room, leaving Claire staring in stunned silence. Claire looked at the closed door, a sudden wave of irritation washing over her. It felt like it had been a long time since she'd watched him walk away. Before, he was always the one walking toward her, into the light. With flowers in his hand, she took a deep breath, suppressing the nameless anger, and turned to leave. Hearing the front door close, Julian knew she was gone, and no doubt, she was off to find her little brother, Leo Chen. Leo Chen was the younger brother of Claire's first love, who had died young. On his deathbed, he had asked Claire to look after Leo, and she had been doing so for 9 years straight. In the 7 years he had been with Claire, Leo had been wedged between them for all 7. It was manageable at first. Leo was a trainee in a pop group over in Korea and rarely came back to the States. They mostly kept in touch by phone. But ever since his band broke up and he returned, he had completely forced his way into their lives. Whenever Leo had the slightest problem, Claire would drop Julian in a heartbeat to rush to his side. First, she would offer a brief explanation, saying Leo had just gotten back and didn't know anyone, so she, as his sister figure, had to look out for him. Later, as it happened. More often, she stopped bothering to explain at all. Left hanging time and time again, any feelings he'd had for Claire had long since worn away. Until 3 months ago, when she said she wanted to throw him a lavish wedding. He had been ecstatic, not because of the grandeur, but because she was finally willing to make their relationship public. He had spent these last 3 months full of anticipation, only to be met with the news of Claire proposing to Leo, dominating the trending topics. Online, thinking back now, all the signs were there. There was always a hidden disdain in the way Leo looked at him. He'd make passive-aggressive comments to his face, then play innocent and tell him not to mind. And Claire? She always defended Leo, coddling her brother while telling Julian to apologize, always calling him petty. Thank God he would be able to leave soon. Then, they could do whatever they wanted. As for the lingering feelings he had for Claire, they had been completely severed by this farcical proposal. It seemed Claire also felt she had gone a bit too far this time. Today, for the first time in ages, she suggested taking him out. Julian thought about it. He was leaving the country soon and did need to buy a few things. The two of them left together, the car heading toward a downtown shopping center. On the way, Claire drove while occasionally glancing at the person in the passenger seat. He was leaning against the seat back, his hand propping up his head as he watched the streetscape retreat outside the window. It's been a while since we've been out. Let's have a good time today. Julian responded without turning his head. Claire swallowed her annoyance and focused on driving. When they arrived at the entrance to the mall, she tried to take his hand, but Julian deftly avoided it. There are too many people. It's not appropriate, he said, glancing back at her, his face devoid of expression. With that, he walked into the mall ahead of her. Claire frowned, watching his back. Something about him felt off, but she couldn't pinpoint what. She hurried to catch up and grabbed his hand. Julian froze instantly, turning his head in surprise. What are you doing? Let go. He tried to pull away, but she held on tight. You're my boyfriend, what's wrong with holding hands? No. Yesterday's trending topic still hasn't died down. You're a regular on business news channels, plenty of people recognize you. You proposed to Leo Chen yesterday, and today you're holding hands with me while shopping? Are you not afraid of the backlash, or are you not afraid of me being dragged through the mud? Claire paused, then, as if understanding something, a smile touched her lips, a hint of delight in her eyes. Are you jealous? Julian closed his eyes, resisting the urge to roll them. After a moment, he said, I don't want to be seen as the other man. After the huge scene you two made, what does that make me? With that, he used his other hand to pry her fingers off without a second thought. Julian Vance. You stop right there. The man ahead of her stopped and turned around. Claire was dressed in a well-tailored black dress, her curly hair cascading over her shoulders, looking perfectly composed. At this moment, however, she was glaring at him with fury. If I get rid of the trending topic, will you let me hold your hand? Claire asked. Before Julian could speak, she had already pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Lisa, take down that trending topic about me and Leo immediately. And issue a statement clarifying our relationship. Lisa, her assistant on the other end, was a bit confused. In that case, Ms. Sterling, what is your relationship with Mr. Chen? Friends? A younger brother figure? This was a sudden change of tune. Friends? A brother figure? Claire said before hanging up abruptly. She looked at Julian, only to find his gaze was complicated, filled with blatant disgust. Julian couldn't be bothered to argue with her. He had things to do today. He was studying abroad soon and needed to be well prepared to avoid spending extra money over there. As he was intently picking out clothes, Claire followed behind him, and her phone rang. The screen displayed Leo, with a cute emoji next to the name. Hello, what's up? The sound of sobbing came from the other end. Claire, the trending topic, did you have it taken down? Claire replied with a faint The person on the other end cried even harder. Julian could hear it clearly from a distance. Claire frantically tried to soothe him, only managing to calm him down after promising to buy him a gift. In her haste, she accidentally let it slip that she was out shopping with Julian. Upon hearing this, the person on the other end immediately hung up and rushed over. In less than half an hour, Leo Chen appeared before Julian. Julian was also quite surprised. Seeing that Julian was ignoring him, Leo took the initiative to approach Julian, picking out some clothes. Don't the brands usually just send things to your house? You just keep the styles you like, he said, then shifted his tone, feigning regret. Oh, look at my memory. I forgot you might not know about that kind of in-home service. But it's okay, bro, he added, sidling up with a grin. Just tell me which brand you like, and I'll have them send it to your place. Brands send me stuff all the time, I can save your size for you. Claire stood by, watching with a smile in her eyes. No, thanks. I prefer to pick my own, Julian said. Leo immediately turned to Claire, his voice full of grievance. Claire, did I say something wrong again to make Julian mad? The way he looked at me just now was so scary. The moment her dear brother complained, Claire was ready to confront Julian, but when she looked around, she found Julian had already walked off to another store. Claire strode after him, grabbing his arm, her voice as cold as ice. Julian Vance apologized to Leo. Her long, manicured nails dug cruelly into his flesh. Julian yanked his arm back, glancing at the fresh, bloody scratches. He looked up at the pair across from him, his face suddenly darkening. Apologize? Why should I apologize to him? Claire had also seen the wounds on his arm and was about to speak, but his words cut her off. What do you mean, why? Leo was just being nice and showing concern for you. The least you could do is be grateful, but instead you insult him. Shouldn't you be the one to apologize? Although it wasn't the first time he'd heard her blindly defend Leo Chen, a sharp, needle-like pain still pierced Julian's heart. Fortunately, he was used to such scenes, and the sting quickly faded. First, I was picking something out and didn't hear a word he said. Second, he was buzzing around me and being loud. Regardless of his intentions, when I don't need it, it's just a lack of boundaries. I was already being considerate by not telling him to get lost, given his celebrity status. So please, do me a favor and give him a heads up. Be smart, and stop bothering me. With that, Julian ignored their ugly expressions and turned to leave. He had come out today to get some necessities. Clothes, daily essentials, electronics, medicine, and more importantly, all sorts of seasonings. Having grown up in the States, he had a quintessential American palate and couldn't get used to many foreign dishes, let alone the thought of surviving on bread and salads abroad every day. This thought, he made a point to grab a cookbook of classic American recipes when Julian got home. Claire was already sitting in the living room. He was a bit surprised to see her when he opened the door. He had assumed she wouldn't be back tonight, that she'd be with her good brother. Hearing the noise, Claire turned her head. When she saw him carrying bags of all sizes, her already unhappy expression darkened further. What took you so long? Julian put his things down and answered as he organized them. You saw for yourself, I was out shopping. Hearing this, Claire moved closer. Her gaze fell on the American cookbook at the top of the pile, and she paused. As if remembering something, her expression softened, and her tone became much gentler. All right, you must be tired after being out all day. From now on, if you need anything, just tell the staff and have them take care of it. Julian's hands froze for a second. He thought Claire was an incredibly contradictory person. She was the one who had suggested taking him out, only to abandon him halfway through for Leo Chen. Now that he was back from shopping on his own, she was telling him to have the staff run his errands from now on. Besides, what was his position in the Sterling household? Who would actually listen to him? For all these years, living as a guest in the Sterling home, he was ostensibly her boyfriend, the future son-in-law of the Sterling family. In reality, his life was less comfortable than that of a servant, facing cold stares at every turn. People openly and secretly said he wasn't good enough for Claire, that if it weren't for the few years he spent with her as a child, he would never have even gotten close to the Sterling family. At first, it genuinely hurt him. He had indeed come to the Sterlings because of Claire, but not by clinging to her. She was the one who had begged him to stay, but once he actually stayed, she became cold and distant, making it seem as though he were the one shamelessly mooching off her family. Gradually, he grew numb. After getting used to the eye rolls and gossip, he spent his days holed up in his room, rarely showing his face unless it was absolutely necessary. Seeing Julian didn't want to talk about it, Claire didn't press the issue. She casually picked up the cookbook and flipped through a few pages. Jules, I suddenly have a craving for your cooking. Will you make dinner for me tonight? Julian turned to look at her. Her expression didn't seem like she was joking. There was even a hint of anticipation in her eyes. He thought for a moment and replied softly, Okay. What do you want to eat? I'll make it. Claire shook her head. Nothing in particular. As long as you're the one making it. Her words instantly pulled Julian's thoughts back to a time long ago. Julian was an orphan, while Claire was the great heiress of the Sterling family. As a child, Claire had been kidnapped by a rival company's people and, through a series of events, ended up at the group home where he lived. They lived together for 3 years. From the time he was 7 until he was 10. Later, the Sterling family found her and took her back. Upon learning about the condition of the group home, the Sterlings generously funded all the children. They met again the year he graduated from high school. The kids from his year had all gotten into good universities, and they collectively wrote a thank you letter to the Sterling family. Claire's father was a businessman who valued his reputation, so naturally, he made a big deal out of such a feel-good story. At a later Sterling family gala, Julian went on stage as a representative of the children to give thanks. After he came down from the stage, Claire approached him. It was only then that he realized the young woman before him was the same little girl who used to follow him around, chirping Starbrother. Back when they were dating, he often cooked for her. Later, she got busier and busier, and they rarely saw each other, let alone ate his cooking. Julian put his things away and went into the kitchen. In less than an hour, for dishes and a soup were on the table. Claire looked at the simple, home-style meal on the table, a smile gracing her face. "It's been so long since I've had such a homey meal." Julian smiled back and served her a piece of fish, but before she could take more than a few bites, Claire's phone rang. On the other end, Leo Chen's voice was tinged with a sob. "Claire, I hurt myself dancing. Can you come see me?" The moment she heard this, Claire stood up and left, without even a single glance in his direction. As the door closed, Julian looked at the table full of food and instantly lost his appetite. He gave a self-deprecating smirk. He knew exactly what kind of person she was, yet he had still obediently listened to her just now. Claire was gone for a full week. During that week, Julian kept himself busy, preparing all the necessary documents for going abroad. It wasn't until last night, as he was getting ready for bed, that the doorbell rang. He turned to see Claire helping Leo Chen walk in. Leo spotted him and grinned. "Julian, good evening." Julian didn't respond, his gaze fixed on the gauze wrapped around Leo's ankle. Leo noticed his stare and quickly explained, "I twisted it practicing a few days ago. I was all alone at home, so I had to bother Claire to bring me back." "Julian, you don't mind, do you?" "If you do, I'll leave right now." Before Julian could speak, Claire cut in. "He won't mind. It's usually just the two of us here anyway. Having you here will liven things up." As she spoke, she looked up at him, her eyes filled with a silent warning that if this had been the past, he definitely would have been unhappy with Claire bringing Leo into their home with the intention of having him stay, but now, he didn't care. He smiled faintly and said to the pair, "I don't mind. There are plenty of empty rooms. Pick whichever one you like." Leo was visibly stunned for a moment, not expecting Julian to be so magnanimous this time, even smiling at him. Previously, whenever Julian saw him, he would either ignore him or roll his eyes. But the last couple of times, he felt something different about him. Could it be that he was just putting on a generous act because Claire was here? Leo's mind raced as he decided to test the waters further. "Well, thanks a lot, Julian. But could I ask you to grab my luggage for me? It's still in the trunk of the car." Julian nodded and turned to go outside. When he returned with the suitcase, he saw Leo nestled on the sofa while Claire was peeling an apple for him. "Thanks for the hard work, Julian." Leo enjoyed Claire's attention, offering thanks with his words, but a hard-to-read glint flashed in his eyes. Julian ignored him, put down the luggage, and went back to his bedroom. That night, Claire didn't come into the master bedroom, which allowed him to get a good night's sleep. The next morning, he woke up to find that Claire hadn't gone to the office. Leo was sitting right next to her, the two of them close together, talking about something with smiles on their faces. When she saw him come out, Claire's smile vanished, and she said, "I have a business trip in a couple of days. You'll take care of Leo at home. Don't provoke him, you hear me? Provoke him?" Julian found it a bit laughable and retorted, "Why do you think I would provoke him?" Claire's expression changed slightly. To be honest, she didn't know why, but her gut feeling was that Julian might give Leo a hard time. After all, his dislike for him was nothing new. "Claire, Julian isn't that kind of person. He wouldn't just pick a fight with someone," Leo interjected at the right moment. Julian's eyebrow twitched as he looked at the speaker. This guy was truly cut out for the entertainment industry, his words laced with hidden meanings. In one breath, he said Julian wasn't that kind of person, but in the next, he implied he was capable of picking a fight. "This is also a good chance for you two to get along for a few days." As Claire was about to get up, Julian stopped her. "Wait." Julian looked at her. "You should find some reliable people to take care of him. I'm planning to go back to the group home. The director isn't feeling well, and I want to go see her." At the mention of the director, Claire's expression softened a bit. She knew the director's health wasn't good. It was an old ailment from years of overwork that could only be managed with slow recuperation. Leo, however, seemed a bit anxious. He had planned to accidentally get bullied by Julian during this time, so he could complain to Claire when she got back. With both of them leaving, his plan would be ruined. Julian took in Leo's subtle expression. He knew in his heart that this person would definitely stir up trouble while Claire was away, and then Claire, as always, would take his side without hearing the full story. He just wanted a few peaceful days in his last month before leaving. Was that too much to ask? Besides, he really did need to see the director and the kids at the home one more time before he left. Julian and Claire left the house together. One headed north, toward the airport. The other drove south, toward the group home. On the way, Julian didn't forget to buy some supplements, toys, clothes, and school supplies for the children. Every time Julian stepped through the gates of the group home, a steady warmth filled his heart. It felt like the safest harbor in his wandering world, a sense of belonging gently enveloping him. The moment he appeared, the children playing in the yard immediately swarmed him, chirping like little sparrows. Star. It's Star. The children's bright, smiling faces and their crisp, clear calls instantly lit up his soul. Julian handed out the small gifts he had brought one by one, gently asking about their health, their lives, and their studies. After checking in with each of the children, he made his way to the director's office. The director was already 63, and the marks of time had quietly stooped her back. When Julian pushed open the office door, Director Peterson was hunched over her desk, sorting through thick files. Star. The director looked up, her eyes flashing with surprise when she saw him. Director Peterson, I came to see you and the kids. The old director took Julian's hand and led him to the old sofa nearby, studying him for a long moment before sighing with concern. Oh my, you've lost weight. Your face is all sharp. You haven't been eating properly again, have you? In this world, it seemed the only person who truly cared about whether he was warm and well-fed was Director Peterson. Not wanting to worry her, Julian made up a casual excuse and quickly changed the subject. Were you just looking at the children's files? Yes, it's that time of year again for physicals. The director's attention was successfully diverted. I always go over the children's health reports. If anyone isn't feeling well, I have to take them to the doctor right away to be sure. When it came to the children, Director Peterson's words flowed endlessly, her expression like someone counting the world's most precious treasures. A warmth spread through Julian's eyes. Director Peterson had poured her entire life's energy and love, without reservation, into this small home and the children within it. After some small talk, Julian finally spoke softly. Director Peterson, I was hoping I could stay here for a few days. The old director was slightly taken aback, her searching gaze falling on him. What's wrong? Did you have a falling out with that girl from the Sterling family? Julian shook his head. No, it's not that. I'm going to be studying abroad soon, and I'll likely be gone for several years. Before I leave, I want to spend more time with you and the kids. Then, what about you and the Sterling girl? The director was even more confused. Weren't you two supposed to get married? Julian took a deep breath, fighting to suppress the lump in his throat. We're not getting married anymore. The director fell silent, quickly understanding the reason why. She heaved a long sigh, her voice tinged with helplessness. I knew it would come to this. I always felt you two weren't quite right for each other. It's not about your backgrounds or anything, but your personalities just seemed to be missing something. But the most important thing, the director said, looking him in the eyes, is that I feel that girl's heart isn't warm enough. If she truly held you at the center of her heart, why has she never once come here with you? And why is there not a single trace of you two together online? Julian lowered his head, feeling as if a wound in his chest had been torn open again. So her indifference was that obvious enough for any observer to see at a glance. It was true. If Claire truly loved him, how would the staff have dared to look down on him? When others slung mud at him, how could she have stood by and done nothing? Not to mention the blurred lines between her and Leo Chen. Julian gently rested his forehead on Director Peterson's thin shoulder, the accumulated grievances. Finally finding an outlet, the director's warm, rough hand patted his back again and again. The motion was gentle and familiar, just like how she used to soothe him to sleep a long, long time ago. It will be okay, Star. The old woman's voice was gentle yet firm. Everything will be okay. A boy as good-looking and capable as our Star will surely find someone who is sincere and treasures you. After a good while, Julian slowly choked back his silent sobs. He rubbed his nose, a little embarrassed. I'm sorry, I made a fool of myself. Don't be silly, the director chided, patting him lightly. I've watched you grow up since you were little. Don't I know your temperament? You wouldn't be like this unless you were truly at your wits' end. Julian didn't want to dwell on the topic and stood up. I'm going to see what the kids are doing. Watching his thin figure walk away, the old director let out another long sigh. She could only hope that this Star she had watched grow up would face fewer storms on the road ahead. On the 7th day of his stay at the group home, Julian received a call from Claire on the other end. Her voice was its usual cool tone. Where are you? The group home. I'll be back tomorrow. After getting her answer, the person on the other end hung up abruptly. That night, as he was casually scrolling through social media before bed, he saw a new post on Leo Chen's account. Claire was back, and she had brought Leo a gift. In the photo, Leo was beaming as he showed it off. The next morning, as Julian packed his simple luggage to leave, he found Director Peterson standing at the door with all the children. It seemed the director had told them he was going on a long trip. Julian wasn't one for sentimentality. He simply gave each of them a solid hug, said a few words of encouragement and farewell, and then opened the car door and got in. Returning to the place he once considered home, Julian immediately sensed that something was different. The once minimalist walls were now covered with Leo Chen's posters, and various decorations in different styles had been added everywhere. In the most prominent spot in the living room, there was even a large heart shape made of ribbons and balloons. When Leo saw him push the door open, a flicker of contempt flashed across his face before he quickly switched to a warm smile. "Julian, you're back. It's my birthday today, and Claire told me to invite some friends over to celebrate. You don't mind, do you?" It was only then that Julian realized the reason for the house's festive decor. His face remained expressionless as he carried his small bag into the living room. His eyes scanned the familiar corners, noticing that many of the small objects that held memories for him and Claire were gone. He didn't need to think hard to know it was Leo's doing. But for Leo to dare to do this, it was undoubtedly with Claire's tacit approval, or even encouragement. He suddenly remembered that when Claire had called him last night, it was already past 10 o'clock, so she had only just realized he wasn't home then. Had she rushed back to celebrate Leo's birthday? "It's decorated nicely," Julian said, his tone unreadable. "Happy birthday." With that, he walked straight to his bedroom without waiting for Leo's response. He pushed open the door, and the sight before him made his heart sink. In the room, many of his personal belongings were gone. The bed was made with unfamiliar sheets, showing clear signs that someone had been sleeping there. Even the one and only travel photo of him and Claire that had hung on the wall was gone. Leo followed him in, his tone almost boastful. "Oh, Julian, I forgot to tell you. I've been staying in this room while you were away." Julian turned his head, his cold gaze sweeping over Leo, making no effort to hide his detachment and disgust. Some people's intentions are so obvious they don't even bother to hide them, eagerly trying to take over. Seeing Julian finally show the emotional reaction he had been hoping for, Leo was practically bursting with joy inside, but his face instantly switched to a wronged expression. "Julian, are you angry? I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." Before he could finish, tears were already rolling down his cheeks. "Julian, if you're not happy about it, I'll move out right now. Please don't fight with Claire because of me." What's going on? Were you giving him a hard time again?" Claire's voice, laced with clear displeasure, came from the doorway. She had heard Leo's crying and rushed in, immediately pulling him behind her protectively. No, Leo said, his head bowed, his voice thick with deliberate sobs. "Claire, you misunderstood Julian. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have taken his room. It's only right for him to be upset and angry." Hearing this, Claire naturally came to her own conclusion. She first soothed Leo with gentle words before raising her head to look at Julian. The warmth in her eyes from a second ago had vanished, replaced by an icy indifference. "I arranged for Leo to stay here. You weren't here, so the room was empty anyway. This room has good lighting and ventilation. Leo's foot was injured and he needed to rest, so I had him move in." She rattled off a list of reasons, each one defending Leo and placing all the responsibility on herself. Julian saw it all with perfect clarity. Since they enjoyed acting, he was happy to play along. "So," his voice was unnervingly calm, "you two slept together?" "Julian Vance." Claire shrieked his name, her eyes sharp enough to pin him to a pillar of shame. "I'll say this one last time. I only see Leo as a dear brother. If you keep making trouble like this, don't blame me for being merciless." So after 7 years together, there was still mercy to be spoken of between them. Julian suddenly found it ironic, almost wanting to see her completely lose her composure. "This place," he gestured around the bedroom, "is the new home we chose together. This bed," he pointed to the bed, "is our marital bed. You brought him here and let him sleep in this bed. Claire, tell me, how am I supposed to believe you?" Claire's body jolted. It seemed she had completely forgotten the significance this room once held. She knew very well that Julian came from a group home, and she understood even better his almost stubborn longing for a home and family. That's why back then, she was the one who held his hand firmly, promising with unwavering certainty, "We will always be together, we'll have our own little home, and we'll have our own children." Those vows were so resounding then. But 7 years later, it seemed she hadn't managed to keep any of them for him. A natural urge to explain surfaced, but she opened her mouth and found she didn't know where to begin before she could gather her thoughts. Leo, who was behind her, fell to his knees with a thud, his knees hitting the floor with a dull sound. "Julian, you've misunderstood. You've really misunderstood," Leo cried, his voice choked with tears as he desperately tried to explain. "There's nothing going on between Claire and me. We're innocent. Please, don't fight with her because of me. It's my fault. I'm an idiot. I didn't know this was your marital room, and I certainly didn't know that was your marital bed. I'm sorry. Julian, I apologize to you." Claire snapped back to reality and immediately bent down to pull Leo up. But Leo struggled, forcing his body downwards, refusing to get up. He cried out, his voice still choked with tears, "Julia, if you don't forgive me, I won't get up." Watching Leo like this, Claire looked up at Julian, her eyes filled with suppressed rage. "Julian Vance, what do you want? Are you not happy until you've made everyone miserable?" Leo already said he didn't know. How can a grown man be so petty? Can't you be more open-minded? You're so suspicious all the time. Is it that any man who comes near me, you wish you could just swallow them whole? I never thought you were this kind of person. It's absolutely suffocating. Although his feelings for Claire had long cooled from the daily indifference, hearing her berate him so harshly for another person, the quiet scar on his heart was brutally torn open, a dull ache spreading through him. "Fine. I'll give you what you want." Julian's voice was unnaturally calm. He quickly pulled out his suitcase, stuffed his last few personal items inside, zipped it up, and left the home he had once dreamed of without a single look back. The wheels of the suitcase glided across the smooth floor without a moment's hesitation. The day of departure had arrived. Julian opened his suitcase one last time, his eyes scanning over each item for a final check. The soft click of the zipper closing severed all ties. "To this city." He glanced at his phone screen, 9 o'clock sharp. His flight was at 3 in the afternoon. If everything went smoothly, a bright, clear day would greet him when he arrived in the foreign country. It was still early. He planned to order some takeout to fill his stomach, then play some games to relax. The thought of embarking on a brand new journey brought a long-forgotten sense of ease that welled up from his heart, a feeling that grew more exhilarating the more he thought about it. However, this budding sense of relief didn't last for 3 minutes before a shrill ringtone rudely shattered the morning's peace. The name flashing on the screen made Julian frown in annoyance. He stared at the blinking screen for a few seconds before his finger unhesitatingly swiped to decline the call. Almost immediately, Claire's call came through again. Knowing Claire, she would keep calling until he answered. Even if he turned off his phone and disappeared, with Claire's resources, finding him would be a piece of cake. He couldn't afford to mess up at this crucial moment, so he resolutely pressed the answer button. "Where are you?" The voice came at the most inopportune time. Julian suppressed his irritation and asked back, "What's up? Don't you remember what day it is today?" There was a clear pause on the other end, and her tone quickly took on an edge of anger. Julian glanced at the date on his phone and muttered, "I have no idea what you're talking about. If there's nothing else, I'm hanging up." "Wait. Did you really forget, or are you throwing a tantrum on purpose?" Claire waited a few seconds without a response and then prompted, "Today is our 7th anniversary. Where are you? I'll come pick you up." 7th anniversary, Julian rubbed his temples. He hadn't realized he had been entangled with Claire for 7 years. 7 years. That was a long time. He had genuinely forgotten today. After deciding to leave, he had put aside everything related to her, so it was natural that he forgot, but surprisingly, Claire had remembered and taken the initiative to call. "No need. I'm busy today. We can talk another time." Just as he was about to hang up, an elderly voice came through. "Julian, we're having a family gathering at noon. Aren't you coming?" It was Claire's grandfather, the pillar of the Sterling family. In their 7 years together, Julian hadn't met him many times. Sterling was the only one in the family who treated him normally, or rather, neutrally would be more accurate. His attitude was neither cold nor warm. When they met, he would always smile and chat about recent events, ask about life at the Sterlings, and was most concerned about their relationship. He hadn't expected the grandfather to be right there, even inviting him to a family dinner. He had never been part of those gatherings. Why was he suddenly being asked this time? Could the Sterlings have guessed something? If the Sterling family got involved, he wouldn't be able to leave at all. Hello, Mr. Sterling. I'm sorry, I can't get away. I'll make a special trip to visit you next time. Just when he thought he had declined, Claire's cold voice cut in. Your seat is reserved. Get over here immediately, or I'll have someone come and get you. Julian knew then that this meal was not optional. He took a slow breath, suppressing his annoyance. Fine. I'm on my way. The call ended, and a location pin immediately popped up. It came with a message: dress formally. Look handsome. With no other choice, Julian opened his suitcase and pulled out a light grey suit. He left the hotel, hailed a cab, and headed straight for the Sterling family's estate. Half an hour later, he arrived. He couldn't understand why rich people lived in such remote places. Was it to show how special they were? Muttering to himself, he followed a servant through the main gate. The old estate was built against a mountain, spacious and serene. After walking through a long corridor for nearly 10 minutes, he finally saw people. Upon closer inspection, Claire was standing at the entrance, waiting. Seeing him, a small smile appeared on her otherwise cold face. He wasn't sure if she was just tired or what, but he felt like she had become a different person. The two walked in silence, with Julian following quietly behind, feeling as though she was sneaking glances at him. He had no idea what they were up to and could only take it one step at a time. As he entered the grand hall, the crowd instantly fell silent. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Julian as he scanned the room. Some faces were familiar, others complete strangers. Surprisingly, Leo Chen was also there. Claire led him to see Mr. Sterling. The moment the old man saw him, he smiled warmly. You're finally here. Julian was clueless but nodded honestly. The grandfather saw his nervousness and reassured him, don't worry. After today, you two can live your lives in peace. Everything will be settled. Settled. The word made him repeatedly ponder its meaning. Half an hour later, more people began to arrive. At 11 o'clock sharp, Claire took the stage. She cleared her throat and, holding the microphone, said, "Thank you all for coming to the Sterling family gathering today. I have two major announcements to make. First, from now on, I will be in charge of Sterling Enterprises. The second thing." She paused, her smiling gaze turning to Julian. "I want to introduce someone important." She pointed at Julian. "This is Julian Vance. We have been in love for 7 years, and he will be my husband." A chill instantly ran down Julian's back. The prying eyes of the crowd were glued to him. He looked up and saw Claire staring right at him. The moment their eyes met, he thought he saw the warm girl from the past, the Claire who used to sweetly call him Star. He didn't understand what had happened in the last couple of weeks, but he felt she had completely changed. Seeing him dazed, Claire walked down the steps and stopped in front of him. She took out a small box, opened it, and said earnestly, "Julian Vance, let's get married." Julian's mind was buzzing. What was happening? How did things turn out this way? What on earth had happened in the last 2 weeks? What had he missed? Before he could think clearly, he heard a splash. Leo Chen was shouting. Everyone turned to see that Leo Chen had fallen into the swimming pool. Claire instinctively rushed toward him. It was difficult to move in her high heels and gown. Ignoring her own stumbles and scrapes, she scrambled forward. She jumped straight into the water to pull him out as everyone else rushed to help. Julian turned and quietly walked away. He didn't know that someone in the crowd had seen his lonely retreating figure later. After the two were sent to the hospital, the party broke up in disarray. Leaving the Sterling estate, he hailed a cab and rushed back to his hotel. He grabbed his luggage and bolted for the airport. It wasn't until the plane took off that he finally felt a sense of calm. Looking out the window, the familiar scenery gradually blurred and receded into the distance. It shrank to a black dot, then disappeared completely. Julian Vance was finally free. After a flight of over 10 hours, the plane landed steadily at the capital airport of the UK. As he disembarked and followed the crowd, he spotted the person from the education agency who was there to pick him up. After confirming their identities, he smiled and got into the car with them. By this time, night had fallen back in the United States. Claire Sterling was still in a hospital room, sitting by Leo Chen's bedside. Today, she had officially taken over Sterling Enterprises, finally securing her footing in the family, finally having the power to fulfill the promise she once made. However, things had not gone as planned. To this moment, Julian hadn't even given her a single call, just. As she was hesitating whether to call Julian, Leo Chen woke up in the hospital bed. Claire. Leo's voice was weak, and Claire immediately turned to him. Leo, how are you feeling? Are you uncomfortable anywhere? Should I call the doctor? Claire held Leo's hand tightly, her eyes full of concern. But his mind was filled with confusion. Claire obviously cared about him a great deal, so why was she still with Julian Vance, even planning to marry him? He was completely baffled but didn't dare to ask. I'm fine. After a short pause, Leo's hoarse voice came out again. Claire, I'm so sorry. I'm the one who ruined your proposal today. Claire lowered her head slightly, pursing her lips without a word. It's okay. You should get some rest. With that, she stood up to leave, but Leo suddenly grabbed her wrist. Claire, don't go. Can you stay and keep me company? Claire looked at the pale face before her and ultimately decided to stay. She knew that Leo had caught a bad cold from overworking and then getting soaked in the rain. That's why she had initially wanted him to rest and not attend the party, but Leo had insisted on going. He said, "Today is the happiest day of your life, Claire. How could I miss such a special occasion?" It was because of those words that Claire had agreed to bring him along. Leo Chen was discharged the following afternoon. After he was discharged, Claire first drove Leo home before returning to her own house. She had assumed that after yesterday's proposal, Julian would have forgiven her and would be waiting for her at home. But when she got back, she found the house empty. She didn't know where Julian had gone, and she searched every corner of the house. It was only then that she was certain Julian hadn't come back. If Julian hadn't come back, where could he have gone? Julian didn't know many people in this city. The chances of him staying over at someone else's house for an extended period were almost zero. Thinking of this, she took the initiative to call Julian again. The next second, she discovered the number she had dialed was no longer in service. Unwilling to give up, she dialed 2 more times, with the same result. She tried calling from someone else's phone, but the result was still an invalid number. She then tried to contact him on social media, only to find that he had blocked her. The glaring red exclamation mark on her phone screen, along with the line of small text below it, clearly told her that they were no longer friends on the platform. She was completely baffled. Unable to understand why Julian would suddenly block her, she tried sending a friend request again, only to find that his account no longer existed. When she clicked on his profile, she discovered Julian had deleted that account. Julian had used that account for over 10 years, and he deleted it just like that. Julian's series of actions left Claire completely stunned. Just then, she noticed an unread email in her personal inbox. She clicked open the email, and her eyes widened in an instant. The content of the email was brief. Claire, it's Julian. By the time you read this email, I will be gone. I wanted to say goodbye in person, but then I thought you might be busy and not have the time. Besides, I don't think you'd want to see me, so this is the only way I could tell you. Finally, I hope you won't come looking for me. I will be fine. I wish you peace and happiness for the rest of your life. Claire felt as if she hadn't rested well these past few days. Rereading the email's contents over and over, she glanced at the time the email was sent. It was exactly 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. At that time, she was at the hospital with Leo Chen. She was only then slowly realizing that Julian intended to break up with her. She had never imagined that she and Julian would one day separate. The word was too foreign to them, too hard to believe. That night, Claire tossed and turned, unable to sleep. She searched the house over and over for any trace Julian might have left. She suddenly realized that in this home, after 7 years, there wasn't a single object that belonged to Julian. Claire thought back carefully. Since her last argument with Julian, he had left in a fit of anger and never returned. At that time, Julian had only packed a few of his things before leaving. There was no way he could have taken everything that belonged to him from the house. Unless he had been planning to leave all along. Once this thought emerged, it was like a lit firework, instantly shattering all her rationality. Why? Claire didn't understand why Julian would do this, why he would leave her. She racked her brains but couldn't figure it out, couldn't find a reason for him to break up with her, to leave. Early the next morning, she called her assistant and had them look into Julian's whereabouts. She sat in her office, her hands crossed over her forehead, eyes tightly shut, constantly murmuring Julian's name. After what felt like an eternity, she heard her assistant knocking on the door. "Miss Sterling, I found him." Claire opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on her assistant, and asked coldly, "Tell me, where is he?" "Mr. Vance was staying in a hotel for a while." He checked out at 2 o'clock yesterday afternoon and then booked a flight to the UK. Mr. Vance is most likely in the UK right now. The UK, if he were in the country, she was confident she could find him, but now, Julian had gone abroad and the Sterling family had no connections abroad. If she wanted to find someone, it would definitely cost money. Most importantly, finding a single person would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Given her new position as head of the company, if she were to spend a significant amount of time and money looking for one person, if the old guard at the company found out, they would surely cause trouble for her. So, was she really going to let things unfold this way? No, absolutely not. She would not let Julian leave her. She would definitely find Julian and bring him back. But if she couldn't spend money to find him, wouldn't it be much easier if she had a solid lead? In her memory, Julian didn't seem to have any particularly close friends. After thinking it over, the only person she could think of was the director of the group home. She hurried downstairs, got in her car, and sped towards the group home on the south side of the city. What should have been an hour-long drive, Claire, speeding all the way, made it in just over 40 minutes. When she parked the car steadily and stumbled toward the group home, she found the director standing at the entrance. Her expression looked as if she were specifically waiting for someone. When they met, Claire felt a little embarrassed. After all, she was also a child that the director had once cared for, and now she was here to question her. Director Peterson, I want to know, do you know where Julian is now? The director didn't answer, just looked at her quietly, then slowly shook her head. I don't know where he went, but I know you two have broken up. Please don't bother Star anymore. He has already been through so much, suffered so much pain. I hope you can let him go, let him go. Those 3 words were particularly jarring. Was she saying that Julian had suffered greatly and endured many hardships with her? What right did she have to think that, and what right did she have to say that to her? What do you mean by that? Do you know where he went? Claire's eyes were red as she moved closer to the director, her tone fierce. If you know where he is, I suggest you tell me, or else. Before she could finish, the director interrupted her with a smile. In your memory, what was Star like? The question was very sudden and seemed completely unrelated to her purpose for coming to see the director today. Why would she ask that? But upon careful consideration, she found herself momentarily at a loss for how to answer. The question should have been simple, but she just couldn't say it. Perhaps she was afraid her answer would be negated by the director. Claire clenched her fists tightly, her nails digging deep into her palms. After some thought, Claire's lips moved for a while, but she ultimately chose silence. As long as she didn't say anything, she wouldn't lose. But unfortunately, what she thought was clever was worthless in the director's eyes. With just one sentence, all her psychological defenses were shattered. Have you ever seen Star cry? Cry? Claire froze, carefully recalling Julian's image in her memory. She had known Julian for 10 years, but upon reflection, she had never truly seen him shed a tear. 10 years. How many decades does a person have in a lifetime? Claire bit her lip, her body almost trembling. What do you mean? She didn't even realize her voice was shaking when she asked. The director answered truthfully, he came to see me once, about half a month ago. Half a month ago? Claire carefully calculated the time. Wasn't that when she was on a business trip last, when Julian said he was going to visit the children and the director at the group home? So, it was just as she had suspected. Julian had planned to leave all along. At least earlier than half a month ago. Claire didn't speak, just stared straight at the elderly woman across from her, waiting for her to continue. The director's gaze suddenly became vacant, as if lost in a memory. Star came to visit us and we talked a lot. Among other things, he mentioned that he was leaving. As for where he was going, he didn't say. Did he say why he was leaving? Claire pressed. The director shook her head. No. When he said he was leaving, he seemed quite happy. Then I asked him, if he were to leave, what would happen to your relationship? In an instant, Claire's heart was in her throat. She was just as curious about the answer to this question. Before Julian planned to leave, how did he view their relationship? He told me they were going to break up. The word break up felt like a heavy club slamming down on Claire's head, making her dizzy and her vision go black for a moment. Then she started to sob. The crying was faint, but it soaked a large patch of my clothes. I don't know what happened between you two, but I know you made him extremely sad and caused him a lot of pain. I've raised him for over a decade and have never seen him so upset. At that moment, I felt he was doing the right thing. His choice to leave, to end this terrible relationship, was the most appropriate decision he could make. Claire had probably guessed some of it, but she just didn't want to admit it, or rather, she didn't want to face it. Impossible, you're lying, you must be lying. I was so good to him, I never wronged him. The more Claire spoke, the less confident she became, and her voice grew quieter. The director looked at her without expression, as if looking at an unreasonable person. Her cold gaze was like a sharp sword, stabbing straight into Claire's heart. I really regret it now. The director's sudden words left Claire stunned. Although the words sounded ordinary, the look she gave her was filled with disgust and regret. If I had known Star would suffer so much by your side, I never should have taken you in back then. Or when Star decided to go with you, I should have kept him here. You took my Star, a brilliant, shining star, and turned him into a dim, lusterless one. All his pain was caused by you. So, I truly regret it. The director's words, though spoken softly, as casually as asking have you eaten, or what are you doing, were like a towering mountain pressing down on Claire when they landed on her. It hurt so much she couldn't speak, couldn't walk. Claire opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but not a single word came out. It was as if a large hand was gripping her throat, slowly squeezing the air from her body. She wanted to speak, to breathe, to beg for mercy, to apologize, to ask, where is he now? But the director didn't give her the chance. After saying those words, she ignored her and turned to leave. As she closed the gate of the group home, the director gave her one last look. Her eyes were filled with resentment and helplessness. From now on, don't come here anymore. I think the person who would welcome you the most here is already gone. With that, she closed the door. Claire felt as if this wasn't just an ordinary door, but the door that determined whether she and Julian could ever meet again. Unfortunately, no matter how much she cried out, that door never opened again. Claire returned home, utterly devastated. Once home, she stood at the door and repeatedly rang the doorbell. It was the household maid who opened the door. The maid was initially grumbling, thinking it was Julian outside. Coming, stop ringing. Where have you been? Don't you know to come home earlier? A grown man, jobless, and so much trouble. Out every day, who knows where, messing around with other women. I really don't know what the young miss sees in you. Next time you better be home earlier, if you're like this again, you. The maid hadn't finished her sentence when she opened the door and saw Claire standing there. Claire hadn't expected to inadvertently overhear such words just by knocking on the door at night. So, this is how Julian lived at home every day. At this thought, Claire's entire demeanor changed. Her gaze towards the maid was like ice in winter, devoid of its former gentleness. The maid was also startled and hurriedly apologized to Claire. My lady, I'm so sorry, I didn't know you were back. Please, come in. So, this is how you treat him when I'm not around. The maid's body trembled, momentarily unsure of how to respond. If Claire truly loved Julian, then they, the staff, would naturally not dare to say anything defiant. But she had worked for the Sterling family for many years and had seen Claire's attitude toward Julian with her own eyes. The Sterling heiress's attitude toward Julian was extremely cold, and she had even kicked him out of the house not long ago. Yet now, Claire was showing a look of displeasure. Was it because Julian was still nominally her boyfriend, so she was standing up for him? As a servant, she had always acted according to her master's mood. This inconsistency in attitude made her confused about Julian's place in Claire's heart. What, is my question so hard for you to answer? Claire's icy tone sent a shiver down the servant's spine. She chose her words carefully, stammering out a defense. Miss, you've misunderstood. Mr. Vance was not friendly to us when he was at home. He was always finding fault with us for no reason, picking on our mistakes. Even though we are servants, he never gave us the respect we deserved, so our feelings for him gradually faded. Claire frowned slightly, thinking carefully. She truly didn't know what Julian's real situation was like at home. Although she had been with Julian for 7 years, she spent most of her time at the company. When she had free time, it was to accompany her parents and grandfather, or Leo Chen. The time she actually spent on Julian was pitifully small. She seemed to really not know Julian very well. Then why didn't you tell me before, just silently enduring it and speaking ill of him behind his back? The servant panicked. No, we just complained occasionally, we never badmouthed him behind his back. Claire let out a cold laugh. I heard you clearly at the door just now. If you dare to speak to him like that through a closed door, who knows how much worse you speak of him behind his back. With that, Claire pushed past the person blocking her way and walked into the house. It was already past 11 at night, and many of the servants in the house had gone to bed. Since Claire had nothing to do, she summoned everyone. 5 minutes later, Claire faced several servants. They were drowsy, disheveled, and completely unaware. After a moment of silence, Claire spoke. "I hear that Julian used to bully you at home. Is this true?" Hearing this, everyone instantly woke up. Although they worked in this house, they understood that the real power lay with the woman in front of them. Julian, as Claire's boyfriend, had visited only a handful of times, and the time they spent together was even less. They all felt that to Claire, Julian was an insignificant person she would casually toy with when she remembered him. Coupled with the fact that they had previously learned Julian had been kicked out by Claire, they knew he was now despised by her. Faced with a choice between a despised person and a wealthy, powerful master, they naturally chose the latter. Now that Claire was asking this question, she most likely wanted to know about Julian's daily life at home. They wouldn't miss such a golden opportunity to perform, and so, one by one, they began to list Julian's faults. Claire had not expected Julian to have had such a difficult time at home. Although she wouldn't dare to say she knew Julian best, she knew he would absolutely not do the things these people were describing. She suddenly remembered the director's words, that Julian had been wronged at her place. From these people's attitudes toward Julian, it was clear they didn't take him seriously at all. And these people were all hired by her to take care of Julian, which meant that to some extent, they represented her attitude toward him. Having figured this out, Claire's aura instantly turned icy. She sat on the sofa, arms crossed over her chest, her gaze sharp, as if she were about to erupt at any moment. Her gaze was locked on the person in front of her, her eyes glinting with an emotion they couldn't comprehend. Seeing Claire remain silent, the group thought she was still angry about Julian's behavior. They gradually quieted down, all waiting for Claire to state her position. "Why did you stop? What else did he do?" One person said, "Miss, don't be angry. We're all used to it. He's been kicked out anyway, so we servants haven't really lost anything." Wronged. Claire heard that word again, and a sharp pain shot through her heart. "Yes, miss, we are all used to it." The speaker was the servant who had opened the door earlier. Because Miss rarely comes here, it was mostly Mr. Vance at home by himself. It's inevitable that he would get emotional, so it's understandable that he had a bit of a temper. The words she had spoken at the door earlier were truly what she felt. Because Claire rarely came here, and even when she did, she would give advance notice, not arrive suddenly like today. In the past, only Julian would knock when he came home late at night. Everyone else had a key. They had subconsciously assumed it was Julian knocking late at night this time, which is why they had spoken so harshly without a second thought. Claire didn't want to waste any more words on these people. She stood up, looked coldly at the few people in front of her, and asked, "You say he bullied you and deliberately made things difficult for you when he was home. Now that he's gone, you're not going to hold it against him, is that what you mean?" Although the group didn't understand what Claire meant, they nodded reluctantly. After getting their response, Claire smiled. "All right, you can all pack your things and leave." She sat down and added impatiently, "Now, immediately, pack your things and get out." The group exchanged glances, and the boldest one couldn't help but ask, "Miss, can you tell us why you're firing us? Did we do something wrong?" A cold smile played on Claire's lips as she looked at the servant who had asked. "I know what kind of person Julian is. Don't think that just because I wasn't here, I don't know anything." She pointed to a corner. "There are cameras installed all over the house. I can see everything clearly. The things you mentioned, I will investigate. If it's true as you say, then you can leave and find better jobs. But if what you said is not true, then I can guarantee that no one will ever hire you again." Hearing this, everyone understood. "Please don't, miss. We know we were wrong." Someone started begging, and then the others followed suit. "Miss, we were wrong. Please give us another chance." They weren't stupid. The pay at the Sterlings was high and the work was easy. Most of the time, they were left to their own devices. As for taking care of Julian, he mostly took care of himself, so they hadn't really helped much at all. Looking at the group crying and begging before her, Claire's eyes grew dim. As expected, these troublesome people were using her name to disregard the rules and were slandering Julian behind his back. This led Julian to mistakenly believe that in her eyes, he was that terrible, that insignificant, which is why he ultimately chose to leave. Therefore, She would not let anyone who had bullied Julian get away with it. So you don't want to leave? Then I'll have to use my own methods to see you out. The moment these words were spoken, the servants panicked. The methods Claire spoke of were not something they could withstand. There was still time. It was best to leave on their own accord. Watching them rush back to their rooms, hastily packing their belongings and disappearing into the night, their figures gradually vanishing. The spacious house instantly became empty, leaving her alone on the sofa. It was only then that she suddenly wondered if Julian had been like her at this moment, during all the time she hadn't come to be with him, curled up in some corner of the house, enduring the loneliness by himself, quietly waiting for her to appear. Claire sat desolate all night, experiencing for the first time what Julian must have felt having not slept all night. She went to the office with a weary body. The moment her assistant saw her, he knew she hadn't slept well the night before. "Miss Sterling, are you all right? Why don't you take a rest today? I'll keep an eye on things at the office, and if there are any issues, I'll consult you." Claire gently shook her head. Although she was the Sterling family's heiress, many people did not have high hopes for her when she returned to secure her current position. She had endured countless sleepless nights, reviewed countless proposals, and drank countless glasses of wine. She once thought that only by securing her current position could she give Julian the best and most stable home. But now, she had achieved it, and Julian was gone. This feeling was truly painful, like achieving success after a long struggle, only to have no one to share the joy with. "Lisa, I'm here." Lisa looked at the haggard woman behind the desk, who looked as if she could collapse at any moment. "Tell me, did I do something wrong?" Lisa was slightly taken aback, not expecting Claire to ask him this question. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer. After a moment of silence, he said, "No, you wanted to give Mr. Vance the best, that was your promise to him. He will surely be happy when he finds out." Claire let out a bitter smile. "But the person who made that promise with me is now gone. I want to fulfill this promise, but I've lost my way. Tell me, what should I do? In the past, was I really too cold, too neglectful of him?" Hearing that last sentence, even Lisa couldn't help but be slightly stunned. His lips moved slightly as he posed a question. "Do you want to know the answer?" Hearing this, Claire immediately lifted her head, looked at Lisa, and nodded firmly. "Tell me, Miss Sterling, honestly, if you hadn't personally told me that Mr. Vance was your longtime partner and that you were about to get married and he was a very important person in your life, just by looking at how you are now, I would not have believed it." "Why is that?" Claire asked subconsciously. Lisa frowned slightly, trying to figure out how to say it tactfully yet make Claire understand his meaning. Claire wasn't stupid and naturally sensed Lisa's hesitation. She said, "You can just say it directly. I promise I won't get angry." Lisa took a deep breath and said slowly, "In my opinion, you don't seem to love Mr. Vance that much. At least as an outsider, I haven't seen how deep your love for him is." "Impossible. I love him. I love him very much. He's the one I love the most," Claire retorted instinctively. This was the one accusation she could not accept. She couldn't stand anyone saying she didn't love Julian. "But your actions really don't make people feel your love. Let alone Mr. Vance himself, even us bystanders can see that you only have indifference and perfunctory responses for him." Claire was stunned on the spot. She never expected that in the eyes of others, her relationship with Julian was so fragile. "Explain yourself. How do I not love him?" she pressed. Lisa replied, "Other people's love is about spending time and energy to be with their partner, to be there for them at the first sign of need, to help solve problems. Even if they can't solve it, they will stay by their side and provide emotional support. But you and Mr. Vance sometimes don't see each other for a week. When you do meet, it's just for a meal, and then you leave immediately. You've never cared about Mr. Vance's life, his needs. You haven't let him into your world, nor have you brought him into your life. Among the people around you, besides your family, how many know that Mr. Vance is your partner?" No wonder when they first got together, Julian had asked her when she would introduce him to her friends, but she had coldly refused, using the excuse of being busy with work and having no time. And when he asked if he could come to the company to see her, to bring her lunch, she had also coldly refused. "Miss Sterling, to be honest, perhaps in many people's eyes, your real partner is not Mr. Vance, but Mr. Chen." "Mr. Chen, Leo Chen. Why would there be such a misunderstanding?" You are often seen with Mr. Chen, buying him all sorts of gifts, having dinner together, and even visiting him on set out of town. Everyone thinks he is the one you love. Even the person you proposed to was him. Have you ever done any of these things for Mr. Vance? A light, casual question felt like a large hand fiercely gripping her heart, squeezing it again and again, as if to crush it into powder. She didn't know how to respond, nor how to explain. In the end, she just waved her hand, signaling him to leave. She had been busy wrapping things up for the past few days, then busy preparing for the proposal. After that, she spent 2 days taking care of someone in the hospital, followed by 2 days of barely eating, on top of not sleeping a wink last night. Sure enough, Claire fainted when she woke up again. The strong smell of disinfectant instantly filled her nostrils, stimulating her somewhat groggy mind. "Claire, you're awake. Are you okay?" The speaker was Claire's mother, sitting by her bedside, holding her hand tightly. Claire turned her head dazedly to look at her. "I'm fine." But as soon as she spoke, her throat hurt terribly. Immediately, a glass of warm water was handed to her. Looking to the side, she saw it was Leo Chen. "Claire, you really gave us a scare. No matter how important work is, you can't neglect your own health. Do you know how terrifying it was when you suddenly fainted?" Although Leo's words were chiding, the heartache in his eyes and tone was almost overflowing. After drinking some water, her throat felt a bit better. She looked at Leo and smiled. "I'm fine. You should go take care of your things. I have someone to look after me here." Leo wanted to say something else, but Mrs. Sterling also spoke up. "Leo, you should go. I'm here, Claire will be fine." With things said to this extent, Leo had no choice but to leave, looking back every 3 steps. As soon as he was out the door, Mrs. Sterling's expression changed. "Tell me what's going on." Claire wasn't foolish. She naturally knew what her mother was referring to. She must have already known about Julian's departure. "Mom, he's gone." "So what? So you've gotten yourself into this state over a man?" Mrs. Sterling's tone was flat, but her face wore an expression of disappointment. "Do you love him that much?" Faced with her mother's question, Claire closed her eyes and softly hummed in agreement. But then she heard, "I never saw you love him this much before. When he was being bullied in the past, you never cared. We all thought you were just playing around with him. Why did everyone think she didn't love him, that she wasn't sincere with him? Was she such a terrible person in other people's eyes?" "Mom, you also think I don't love him?" Mrs. Sterling was slightly taken aback, looking at the person on the bed with surprise. The woman before her was haggard and pale, completely devoid of her usual refined elegance, her unapproachable and cold demeanor. The hospital room fell into a brief silence. After a while, Mrs. Sterling finally spoke. "The problem isn't my opinion, but that your love, your care, is too little, too shallow, to the point that he can't feel it, and even we bystanders can't see it. Remember when he first came to our house, you were the one who pestered him to play together, you were the one who begged us to let him stay. Because he took such good care of you during those 3 years at the group home, and because of your pleading, we agreed. After that, you declared you liked him, but he had only been at our house for 3 days at that point. We felt he might have used some method to make you infatuated with him, so we disapproved and even disliked him a little. However, after that, you showed an extremely deep love for him, a kind of doting that everyone could clearly see. He was also very good to you, and we saw all of it. Our family's financial situation is quite good, we don't need you to maintain the family through marriage. So we thought, as long as you could find someone you love and who loves you back, we would be content." Later, you went to college together and would come back to visit us during holidays. You probably don't know, but in the first 2 years you were dating, we had someone secretly watch him. We were worried he wasn't sincere with you, worried he was after your money. But later, we found out that he truly loved you. After he joined the Sterling family as a live-in partner, he was looked down upon by his friends from the group home, but he didn't care and stayed by your side. He also frequently returned to the group home to visit the children and the director who raised him. Based on these actions, we determined he was a good kid. You two were a perfect match, but not long after, or more accurately, after Leo Chen came back, your relationship changed. Guess who was the one who changed? It was rare for Claire to hear her mother speak so much at once. When she heard the last sentence, her face instantly drained of all color. Who could have changed? It was her, of course. After her mother left, Claire lay alone in bed, replaying the words her mother had just said in the end, it was all her fault that it was her favoritism, her neglect of Julian, her smug assumption that Julian would never leave. She had been too arrogant, thinking that a little love, a little money, a little favoritism could keep someone forever, but she forgot that Julian was also a very capable and independent person. After being discharged from the hospital, she went to the old family home. This time, she wanted to find out who had been bullying Julian behind her back. When she arrived at the old house, it was empty except for her grandfather, who was there alone. Seeing Claire, the old man knew her purpose for coming. "Don't bother looking. The person you're looking for isn't here." Claire was a bit surprised. "How did you know I was looking for someone?" The old man smiled faintly, gently patting the seat next to him, motioning for her to sit down. "I know all about what happened between you two. Do you regret it now?" Claire lowered her head and softly hummed in agreement. "Then why did you come here? Who are you looking for?" Claire suddenly became very flustered. She didn't know who to look for either. Her family lived in the old house. How could her family be unkind to Julian? But if not, then why did Julian persuade her to move out back then? She still remembered Julian holding her hand, pleading with her, "Claire, let's move out. It's too inconvenient here." She didn't understand what Julian meant by inconvenient. She only knew that the look in his eyes that day was full of pleading and humility, so she decided to move out. "Grandpa, you mean, yes, the person you're looking for isn't here, and they're not here either," the old man said, then pointed out the window and added, "The person you're looking for is very far from you, yet very close, so close that you haven't even noticed." Instantly, an indescribable feeling spread from Claire's heart throughout her body, making her so nauseous she wanted to vomit. "You mean, the person I'm looking for is myself?" The old man said nothing, just gently stroked her head. The answer was already clear. "How many things did I do to hurt him? I really can't forgive myself." Seeing his little granddaughter crying her eyes out, the old man's heart ached as well. "Think about it carefully, get to the bottom of these things, and after you've sorted out all this trouble, then go find him. Maybe he'll find it in him to forgive you." Claire nodded vigorously, gently hugged her grandfather, and was about to leave. She had only taken 2 steps when the person behind her called out to her. Claire turned her head, looked at her grandfather, and asked, "Grandpa, is there anything else?" "Grandpa has something here he wants to show you. It might be of some help." With that, the old man stood up, walked to the nearby table, picked up a file folder, and handed it to Claire. "Take it. Take it home and look at it slowly. After you've read it, you'll understand. Then it's up to you to decide." Claire didn't know what was inside, but since her grandfather said so, she reached out and took it. After leaving the old house, she didn't go home but went to the office. In her office, she first took out a USB drive. She plugged the USB drive into her computer and opened it to find a surveillance video. The video content was the scene from her proposal day. After she had said those words, she saw from the surveillance footage that Leo Chen, who was not far away, had jumped into the swimming pool himself. Then came the footage of her stumbling, gracelessly rushing over, and jumping in to save him. Finally, the camera zoomed in on Julian's face. In the footage, Julian just stared quietly in the direction of the swimming pool, a flash of sorrow on his face, but more so, disgust and revulsion. Julian was disgusted. Disgusted with her, or with Leo, or perhaps with both of them. Julian watched for a few seconds, then took advantage of the chaos to walk away. He headed in a different direction from everyone else. Others were moving towards the pool, but he chose to leave. That retreating figure was so lonely, so small, so tragic. In an instant, she understood why her grandfather had given her this footage. Then, she opened the file folder. When she saw the contents of the documents, she froze on the spot. This file was an investigation report on the death of Leo's brother, Ryan Chen. Ryan Chen had died in a car accident, but the documents showed that he had eaten peanuts before his death, and Ryan Chen had a severe allergic reaction to peanuts. Unlike a typical allergy, Ryan's reaction would first cause a brief period of difficulty breathing, followed by total body weakness, and finally, possible hallucinations. In other words, Ryan's death might not have been a simple car accident, but someone trying to harm him. They had given him food containing peanuts, causing him to have an allergic reaction, which ultimately led to his tragic death while driving. The reason Claire was so good to Leo Chen was that Ryan had made one last call to her before he died, begging her to take care of his younger brother. Leo Chen and Ryan Chen were 3 years apart in age. Their parents' relationship was not harmonious. They had been married for 6 years, and when Leo was 3, they divorced. Afterwards, both of them started new families and had other children, living far apart and never bothering with each other again. It could be said that Leo was raised by Ryan. On the surface, Ryan was Leo's older brother, but more often than not, he was like a father to him. Claire had always believed the two brothers had a harmonious relationship, but now it seemed that was not the case at all. More accurately, Ryan cared for Leo meticulously, while Leo was full of resentment towards Ryan. According to the information her grandfather gave her, the cause of Ryan's allergic reaction was the home-cooked meal brought to him by his dear brother, Leo Chen, and not long after the meal, Ryan received her call. This day, she still clearly remembers the scene from that day. At that time, she had just joined the company and was still very young. Many people in the company didn't take her seriously, and sometimes even made sarcastic remarks. Most of the time, it was Ryan who stepped in to stop them. Ryan Chen was a young prodigy. He finished his university studies at 19 and was hired by Sterling Enterprises for a hefty price. Claire's father had specially hired him to groom Claire. She only found this out later. During that brief time together, Claire developed feelings for Ryan Chen. However, Ryan kept his distance from her, saying, "We have an employer-employee relationship. If we cross that line, it will affect your reputation." At the time, Claire could sense that Ryan also had some feelings for her, but considering the difference in their status and the potential harm to her reputation, he restrained his emotions. Then one day, she went on a business trip with her father to study abroad, but at the airport, just as they were about to depart, she realized she had forgotten a document, so she called Ryan and asked him to bring it to the airport. It was that phone call that led to Ryan's misfortune. That day, Ryan had eaten the peanut-containing meal made by Leo, had an allergic reaction, and got into a car accident on his way to the airport. In Claire's mind, she had always felt that it was her forgetting the document that forced Ryan to deliver it, ultimately leading to his death, but in reality, it was Leo who had hidden the document in Ryan's office. After she and her father left for the airport, he put the document back on Ryan's desk, creating the illusion that Ryan hadn't organized his files properly, forcing him to rush to deliver it upon receiving her call. Before all this, Leo had already delivered the meal he had prepared to Ryan. Ryan had always been completely unguarded around Leo. This was all Leo's conspiracy. He did it on purpose, wanting Ryan to die, but Claire didn't understand why he would do such a thing. Ryan was his own brother. She went to find Leo, her heart full of confusion and anger. When Leo learned that Claire was coming to see him, he was quite happy at first, but when Claire threw all the evidence and documents in his face, he panicked. He knew his secret was out, that his good days were over. "Why, Leo, tell me why? He was your brother, your own brother. Why would you do this?" Leo was silent at first, then he laughed. He laughed so loudly that in the end, tears streamed from his eyes. "That's right, he was my own brother, so what? Just because he's my brother, does that give him the right to control me, to dictate the course of my life? He was a genius, famous from a young age, the outstanding child everyone compared theirs to, a straight-A student with more trophies than he could count. But I was not like that at all. He thought I was the same as him, so he tried to turn me into a second version of himself. But I couldn't do it. If I couldn't, what was I supposed to do? Tell me, what was the right thing for me to do?" Leo clutched his hair, his face full of sorrow, as if trapped in an endless abyss of pain. Claire looked at the person before her in utter astonishment. This was completely different from the Leo she knew in her memory. Leo was vibrant, sunny, and cheerful, but at this moment, she suddenly remembered Ryan once talking about his brother. He said Leo wasn't very sharp, a bit slow on the uptake, but he was very cute and the most important person in his life. Thinking of this, she asked Leo, "Did you know your brother was sick?" "Sick?" Leo looked at Claire with a stunned expression and asked, "What do you mean by that?" "Your brother had kidney failure. He didn't tell you, did he?" Seeing Leo's expression, she knew Ryan hadn't told him. "Back then, when your brother found out he was sick, he was busy with treatment, handling company affairs, and taking care of you. I asked him why he didn't hire someone to take care of you. He told me you weren't comfortable with strangers, that you needed him to tuck you in at night, that you were afraid of the dark and of thunder, so he had to go home every day. Do you think I knew all your habits because I was so attentive? It was your brother who told me before he died. He had a memo on his phone with every detail about your habits and preferences. You think your brother was controlling you? It's because he was afraid that one day he would be gone, and there would be no one left in this world to take care of you, to love you. He pushed you to be strong, pushed you to persevere, pushed you to integrate into this world, and even on his deathbed, he called me and begged me to take care of you. But you were the one who personally ended your brother's life. Leo was completely stunned at this moment. From the moment Claire said his brother was sick, he had been in a state of utter confusion. Tell me, why did you do it? Why? Leo wanted to speak, but no sound came from his throat. It wasn't until Claire slapped him that he was able to make a sound. I wanted to get away from him, but I couldn't leave him. Because he liked you, I hated you. I knew he didn't like stupid people, so I deliberately hid your files. I wanted to see you make a fool of yourself, but after a while, I think I started to like you too. Did you know? I like you too. I've liked you for many years, longer than Julian. But back then, you only had eyes for my brother. My brother was too brilliant, a height I could never reach. So, I just wanted to be a little closer to you. Was I wrong? So for that, you killed your brother? I didn't. Leo shouted. I just wanted to teach him a lesson, to make him stay away from you, and it was also a way of getting back at him for always controlling me. I never expected him to personally deliver a stupid file. I tried to stop him, but he pushed my hand away and insisted on going himself. He was my own brother. Even if I hated him to the core, I never truly wanted to kill him. Yet, he ended up dying because of me. Tell me, how could I not be devastated? I even wanted to end my own life to be with him. It was you who stayed by my side, never leaving, making it impossible for me to even die. It was you who promised to always be by my side, and only then did I slowly start to want to live again. But in less than 2 years, you fell for Julian Vance. You had only been together for 3 short days when you declared you liked him. How could you do that to my brother? Claire took a slow, deep breath and said, Julian and I lived together in the group home for 3 years. Without him, I would have been dead long ago. Leo was slightly taken aback. He only knew that Julian was an orphan and that Claire had also spent a few years in a group home after being kidnapped as a child, but he never expected they were in the same one. The Sterling's home was so close to Julian's group home, how could they not have found her? He had always thought Claire had grown up in a group home out of state. Suddenly, Claire seemed to remember something and asked, So, Julian's departure, did you have a hand in that too? Leo looked at Claire and smiled, nodding. That's right. I helped out quite a bit. I even helped arrange the place he went to. Hearing these words, Claire's brow furrowed, her disgust unconcealed. What else did you do? Leo chuckled softly. What else could I do? Just send him photos of us together, and taunt him a little. Just that, those 2 words sent a rage through her. So the servants at home, you instructed them to bully him? Leo nodded in admission. Yes, I instructed all of them. Claire closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and tried to suppress her emotions. When she opened her eyes again, her gaze was as calm as a tranquil lake, looking at Leo without a hint of emotion. Why are you looking at me like that? What right do you have to look at me like that? You should hate me, you should despise me. Why are you looking at me with such an indifferent gaze? Claire understood that she and Ryan were the 2 most important people in his life. Whether it was love or hate, as long as he cared the most, it was fine. But now that Ryan was dead, she no longer held any expectations for him. So, when Leo lost the 2 people he cared about most, he couldn't take it anymore. At UK in a classroom at a university in the capital, a few students were gathered, gossiping. Hey, have you guys heard? Leo Chen was sent to prison for murder. Huh? Who's Leo Chen? The person who spoke first patiently explained, he's a pretty famous celebrity from the States, an idol. He's good-looking and talented. I can't believe he'd commit murder. It's terrifying. As he spoke, he showed the news on his phone to the others. Oh my God, the news says he killed his own brother. How much hatred must there be to kill your own brother? That's so brutal. Hearing the words own brother, Julian's heart suddenly trembled. From the moment he heard the name Leo Chen, his attention had been completely focused on the group of people next to him. Now, learning that not only had he killed someone, But it was his own brother, wasn't that Claire's first love? How old was Leo then? Not even an adult, yet so ruthless. Do you guys know who his brother was? Amidst the group's expectant and gossipy expressions, the person slowly said, Ryan Chen, the one who was on TV, the one who won second place in a world-class children's educational game competition. He was an incredibly rare talent for the country, yet he was killed by his own brother. When the news came out back then, my mom even secretly cried, saying how could such an outstanding kid have such a bitter fate. Then she beat me up, scolding me for being dumb but lucky. Julian's thoughts were already drifting further and further away. He knew of Ryan Chen too. Back then, he had also admired how amazing Ryan was at such a young age. Later, when he learned that Claire and Ryan had been together, he also thought they were a good match. He never expected him to die at the hands of his own brother. He took out his phone and checked the news from the States. After reading the news, he understood that it was specifically the Sterling family who had reported Leo Chen. Weren't Leo Chen and Claire on good terms? Why would they report him? Was it because Leo Chen had killed Ryan Chen, and Claire, to avenge her first love, chose to turn him in righteously? He tried searching for related news again and finally saw a post from an insider who said Leo Chen and Ryan Chen were brothers. But because Ryan was too outstanding and controlling, and later because Leo fell in love with Ryan's partner, he resorted to murder. Reading this message, a cold sweat broke out on Julian's back. He knew Leo liked Claire, but he never expected his love to be so extreme that he could be ruthless even to his own brother. He thought about how Leo would occasionally send him photos of him and Claire together over the past 2 years, some intimate, some ordinary. Perhaps because Claire gave more of her attention and love to Leo, Leo didn't feel threatened by him, and so he didn't personally get involved too much. The more he thought about it, the more he felt a lingering fear. Thank goodness he had gotten out in time. Otherwise, if Leo went crazy one day and killed him, what would he do? A person who could poison his own brother wouldn't hesitate to kill a stranger and rival like him. Fortunately, Leo was now caught, which could be considered a service to the public. Loving Claire was too dangerous. Luckily, he no longer loved her and had escaped in time. He was thankful for his own quick thinking. Julian, I remember you're from New York too, right? Do you know the Sterlings? Hearing his name, Julian came back to his senses and looked at the speaker. He shook his head slightly. I don't. I'm just an orphan. How would I have the connections to know the Sterling family? Hearing Julian say this, the group quickly apologized, afraid of hurting his fragile heart. He waved his hand, indicating it was fine. Then, he lowered his head and stared at his phone screen, his heart pounding with every new piece of information. After class, he walked back to his small rented apartment, constantly feeling a pair of eyes on his back. But whenever he turned to look, he never found anyone suspicious. After doing this back and forth a couple of times, he quickened his pace and hurried home. Once inside, he quickly locked the door, went to the window, and hid to the side, secretly watching the movement outside. Suddenly, he saw a familiar figure in the crowd. It was Claire. The moment he saw her, Julian didn't feel particularly surprised. He had long figured that with the Sterling family's resources and Claire's methods, finding him was just a matter of time. Taking 3 months to find him was already quite slow. However, it seemed Claire had no intention of coming upstairs to find him. So he would just pretend she didn't exist from then on. He often felt like someone was following him, sometimes for a short while, maybe just for an evening, sometimes for a longer period, perhaps for 3 to 5 days, and sometimes, it was just a feeling of being watched, but that feeling would quickly disappear. Julian knew in his heart that these were all Claire's tactics. As long as she didn't disturb him, he could pretend nothing was happening. 3 years later, Julian returned to the United States. On the day he returned, Claire personally came to the airport to greet him. The moment he saw Claire at the airport, Julian felt no emotion, not even giving her an extra glance. In these 3 years, although he had never seen her, he knew she had always been nearby. He hadn't counted how many times, but it was definitely over 100, which truly surprised him. So this time, he chose to ignore her as well. Julian. Claire, seeing she was being ignored, didn't get angry. Instead, she quickened her pace to catch up and grabbed Julian's arm. Julian turned his head, glanced at Claire, his brow slightly furrowed in displeasure. Is there something you need? Claire opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say now. It seemed she couldn't even manage a simple welcome back. Neither of them were fools. In these 3 years, Julian knew exactly how many times Claire had come to see him. Of course, Claire also knew that Julian was aware she had come to see him, so their relationship was both strange and familiar. Seeing that the other person wasn't speaking, Julian didn't show any impatience. With a gentle shrug, he freed himself from Claire's grip. Julian paid no mind to the person standing there watching him. He left the airport, hailed a cab, and went to a hotel. He had returned to the country this time to participate in a competition. After the competition, he would leave as a contestant. The organizers provided them with accommodation and arranged their daily lives. Julian returned to his room, checked it to make sure there were no cameras and that it was clean and safe, then began to unpack his luggage. After he finished, Julian looked at the time. It was still early. He decided to go visit the director at the home. Leaving the hotel, Julian stood by the roadside waiting for a ride. As he looked up, a black sports car pulled up in front of him. The window rolled down, revealing Claire's face. "Get in. I know where you're going." Julian took a step back, not getting into the car, clearly wanting no contact with her. Claire didn't get angry, just looked at him quietly. "Do you hate me that much? You won't even ride in the same car." Julian still didn't respond. Seeing another car pull up nearby, he quickly walked over. He opened the car door, gave the last 4 digits of his phone number and the address, and urged the driver to go. The driver didn't hesitate, stepping on the gas and speeding away. While driving, the driver suddenly felt something was off. He glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a car that seemed to be following them. That car looked expensive. If there was a collision, he probably couldn't afford to pay for the damages, even with his car and himself combined. This thought, he subconsciously pressed harder on the gas, and the car sped up. Of course, Julian also noticed the car following closely behind and knew who was inside. He told the driver, "Don't worry, just drive normally. The person behind is following me. We just need to be safe. You don't have to mind her." The driver was surprised to hear this. He took a closer look at the passenger in the back. He was indeed well dressed, in designer clothes, looking very elegant and noble. He clearly came from money and power. Thinking about the person chasing them, someone who could afford a sports car was definitely not ordinary. "Buddy, you look like a big boss. How come you're not in your own car?" His own car? Julian smiled faintly. "That's not my car. I just have a connection with the person behind us. She's the real big boss." The driver had been driving for years and had seen all sorts of people. He immediately understood what Julian meant. "A pursuer, huh? Looks pretty serious. Why don't you say yes, handsome?" The driver's casual question unexpectedly made Julian fall silent. After a moment of thought, he answered, "We're not a good match." The driver glanced at the man in the back again and could see his melancholy and reluctance to talk more. The driver tactfully shut his mouth, and the car returned to silence. The car drove all the way to the entrance of the group home. Julian paid the fare and got out. Claire quickly parked her car, wanting to chase after him, but she suddenly remembered the director's words, "Don't come here again." And so, her steps froze at the entrance, her eyes fixed on that familiar figure. The driver, who was turning around, saw Claire get out and stand there watching, and said with a laugh, "Young lady, don't bother watching. He's not interested in you." Claire turned to look at the speaker and asked, "What do you mean?" "The handsome guy in the car just now said you two are not a good match. So, young lady, don't be too persistent. Find someone who likes you." Claire quickly walked up to the driver, asking for the specific details. The driver, just making small talk, said a few more words, repeating what Julian had said in the car. After he finished, the driver added, "Young lady, you look like you have money and you're pretty. Although that handsome guy in front is also good looking, he said you're not a good match. I'd advise you not to be too persistent. You can't force things like love. You should find someone who likes you." Claire's lips were tightly sealed, unsure of how to respond. Finally, watching the driver's car drive away, she stared at the taillights and said, "He used to like me. I was the one he loved the most." Even so, Claire knew in her heart that was all in the past. When Julian gently knocked and entered, the director was busy washing clothes for the children. Seeing the visitor, she was first slightly taken aback, then it dawned on her. "Julian? Julian, is that you?" The Julian of today was indeed different from the one who had left. The Julian of the past was timid, insecure, and thin, often with his head bowed in silence. The Julian of today was confident, cheerful, and tall, with a faint smile playing on his lips. And in his years abroad, Julian had worked out frequently, improving his physique and becoming much more well-proportioned. Seeing Julian's transformation, the director's smile nearly reached her ears. She pulled him into a hug, repeatedly saying, "This is wonderful, just wonderful." Julian chatted with the director for a while, briefly describing his life and studies abroad for the past 3 years, and also explained the purpose of his return this time. The director kept praising Julian, saying how wonderful and successful he was. Suddenly, Julian's stomach rumbled, and he remembered that he hadn't eaten since he got off the plane. The director's face was also full of doting affection as she smiled and said, "Then you sit here, I'll go make you something to eat." The thought of eating the director's home-cooked meal filled Julian with joy. While the director was cooking, he went to check on the children. The children had all grown a lot. The boys were taller, and the girls were even prettier. The children were also stunned when they saw him at first, then someone tentatively asked, "Are you Star?" Julian nodded in response, "Yes, I'm Star. I've come back to see you all." Hearing this, the children all swarmed around him. Julian was surrounded, feeling extremely happy that he chatted briefly with the children, asking about their health and studies, then took a stack of money from his bag and gave each child $100. This was cash he had prepared in advance, just in case there were new children, so he had brought plenty. After receiving the money, all the children smiled from ear to ear, and a joyful smile also appeared on Julian's face when Claire walked in. She saw Julian looking just that happy. She felt as if it had been a long time since she had seen such a radiant smile on his face. She hadn't planned on coming in, but after hearing what the driver said, a new hope sparked within her. She felt that Julian had once loved her so much, and now, if she pursued him with effort, she could surely win his heart again. She planned to use his return this time to get closer to him, to communicate more, and to do her best to make it up to him. "Hey, what are you doing here again? Who let you in?" A little boy saw Claire in the distance, his face showing disgust and vigilance. He quickly walked in front of Julian and said, "What are you trying to do now? Are you trying to drive Star away again? Why are you so annoying? You're a bad woman." Claire stared blankly at the little boy before her. The other children followed his lead, shielding Julian behind them. After Julian left, Claire often came to visit the director and the children in his place. However, she never stepped inside, just dropped things off and left. At first, the children thought she was a good person, but later, when they found out she was the one who had driven Julian away, they all pointed fingers at her. The things she brought were thrown away, and they told her not to come back again. Claire wanted to explain, but she didn't know where to start, and the children wouldn't listen to her explanation. Later, concerned about the children's well-being, she could only have someone else deliver things. She herself would hide in the dark and watch quietly, seeing the children smile and thank the other person, receiving many compliments. But originally, she could have had those smiles and compliments too, she had just thrown them away herself. Julian looked at Claire in the distance and sighed helplessly, saying, "You should go. I don't want to see you, and I hope you won't bother the children." With that, Julian said to the children, "Let's go. The director has prepared delicious food for us. Let's eat together." Watching the children swarm away with him, Claire once again felt a deep sense of powerlessness. The competition Julian was participating in consisted of 5 rounds, a preliminary selection, a final selection, a first round, a semi-final, and a final. Each round was held every 3 days, lasting a total of half a month. During this half-month, besides eating and sleeping, Julian spent every day thinking about how to design his drawings, and he rarely went out. This made it impossible for Claire to see him even if she wanted to. With no other choice, she had to find a way to provide Julian with better meals. To avoid gossip, she had to take on the responsibility for all the contestants' food and lodging. Unexpectedly, her good intentions backfired. The day before the final competition, she had prepared various drinks and desserts for after the meal. It turned out the fruit delivered was not fresh, causing several contestants to have diarrhea, Julian being one of them. The final round was different from the others. In the previous rounds, the topic was given in advance for you to brainstorm and think. The final round, however, had a randomly assigned topic on the spot, with only 15 minutes to think and 45 minutes to draw, for a total of 1 hour. But at the final competition, the contestants were all restless and looked uncomfortable. The judges also noticed something was wrong. Upon asking, they found out that many contestants had stomach aches. Everyone was trying their best to endure it. After a difficult wait until the end of the competition, everyone was sent to the hospital. Later, it was discovered to be food poisoning. Mild cases had diarrhea, while severe cases had food poisoning. After a careful investigation, Claire found out that the person she had assigned had embezzled the money, replacing the good, fresh ingredients and fruit with bad ones. That person had thought it was the last day, so embezzling wouldn't matter, not expecting the consequences to be so severe. Julian was discharged from the hospital the next day. He returned to the hotel and calmly awaited the results of the final competition. The results came out a week later. Unsurprisingly, he won second place. He was quite happy with this result. What surprised him, however, was that the person presenting the award was Claire. The moment he saw Claire appear, Julian understood everything. No wonder this competition had invited him, it was all Claire's arrangement. He accepted the trophy with a cold face, not interacting with Claire at all throughout the process. Even in the photos, one was smiling and the other was stone-faced. People who didn't know the situation couldn't understand why Julian looked so cold and thought he was deliberately trying to act cool. After the competition, Julian had originally planned to leave the next day. However, Mr. Sterling called him over, saying he wanted to meet. He went, simply because he had no reason not to. In this country, he really couldn't afford to offend the Sterling family. Julian had expected something important to happen, but he was once again kept in the dark. The place where they ate was a revolving restaurant. At a table by the glass window while they were eating, Mr. Sterling suddenly said he had to leave for a moment. Not long after, Claire appeared, holding a single rose. Dressed in a wedding gown. This scene made Julian instantly understand that they had booked a table at a couple's restaurant. Since he had arrived, the old man had been chatting with him, rambling on to stall for time. Claire knelt on one knee, presenting the flower in her hand. Tucked inside the blossom was a dazzling ring. She steadied her emotions and asked nervously, "Julian Vance, will you marry me?" Hearing the commotion, the surrounding guests all stood up, their faces full of smiles, shouting, "Get married, marry her, kiss, kiss." Julian glanced down at the ring, it was indeed very beautiful. But he quickly averted his gaze and looked at Claire kneeling on the ground. He said without expression, "Claire Sterling, I've told you before, we broke up 3 years ago. Are you doing this now to put on a show of affection?" Claire's smile froze, and the surrounding people also looked bewildered. "No, Julian, you've misunderstood. I'm not putting on a show. I truly love you. I know I neglected your feelings before, but now I understand. The person I've always loved is you. Please believe me, give me one more chance, okay? A chance? Haven't I given you enough chances?" Julian retorted, "We were together for 7 years. Was there a single day I didn't give you a chance? Now you're asking for another one. I'm sorry, the chances have run out. Chances are for those who are prepared. You weren't prepared for 7 years, so of course I won't give you a chance." With that, Julian turned to leave. Claire got anxious, dropped the flower, and rushed forward to hug his waist tightly, her body pressed against his back. "Julian, I was wrong, I really know I was wrong. I'm begging you, please come back and look at me, just look at me one more time, okay?" Julian forcefully pried the hands from his waist and turned to face the woman behind him. "Claire, many things are in the past. We were together for 7 years, and now we're separated. Let's just live our own lives, part on good terms, and not make things too ugly. I never agreed to break up. You left without a word. I don't agree to this breakup." Julian laughed. "You say you don't agree to the breakup, but in those 7 years, did you really treat me like your boyfriend? Besides your family, how many people knew I was your boyfriend? When I was cooped up at home, being bullied by the staff, where were you? When I was being slandered and framed, where were you then? And finally, I want to say, the proposal was meant for me, yet you put the ring on someone else. Also, to this day, I haven't forgotten the sight of you running towards another man on our proposal day. From the moment you put that ring on someone else, we were completely over. I hope you'll take care of yourself, and from now on, don't show up in front of me again." With that said, Julian turned and walked away with long strides. That night, the video of Claire's rejected proposal quickly went viral. Netizens did some digging and found out that it was the same Claire who had proposed to Leo Chen, put a ring on his finger, said she loved him, and then later explained they were just friends. Combined with the video's content, Julian's story of a 7-year relationship and a 3-year breakup became clear. Netizens calculated the timeline and realized Claire had proposed to Leo while still in a relationship, making Leo the other man. Coupled with Julian's words, Claire's absence when he was being mistreated, bullied, and slandered became evident. The reason why Julian looked so grim at the design competition awards ceremony was also found. Who would be happy to receive an award from such a shameless ex? In an instant, netizens viciously attacked Claire. Even Leo Chen, who was in prison, was not spared and was dragged out for more criticism. Early the next morning, Julian packed his luggage and prepared to head to the airport. While waiting for his flight, Claire appeared again. Her face was deathly pale, her expression weary. "Julian, don't take it to heart. I'll handle the online comments. It absolutely won't affect you." Julian chuckled lightly. "It doesn't have a negative impact on me, but your situation right now might not be so great." "Is this Julian caring about me?" Claire said with a smile. Hearing this, Julian's expression immediately changed. He looked at his watch. It was almost time to board. He said bluntly, "Claire, I'm serious. A breakup is an end. Don't come looking for me again, and don't secretly spy on me. I hate the feeling of being watched." Pausing for a moment, to make Claire completely give up, he took out his phone and sent her a file. "Take your time and look at this. Once you're done, you'll understand. I'm not interested in anything tainted." As soon as the words fell, Julian dragged his suitcase and left. Claire opened the file, and her whole world felt like it was collapsing. The file was full of intimate photos of her and Leo Chen, kissing, cheek to cheek, and even one of a shirtless Leo with her snuggled in his arms. Asleep.it also included some chat screenshots between her and Leo, filled with their sweet interactions, and finally, Leo's provocative messages to Julian. Julian had compiled everything and sent it to her. She understood. It was impossible for her and Julian to ever be together in this lifetime. A sense of powerlessness spread from the bottom of her heart throughout her body. She felt so awful she didn't even have the strength to cry. When she looked up again, Julian's plane had already taken off, flying over her head. She watched the plane recede into the distance, silently thinking, "Julian, goodbye, may the rest of your life be peaceful and happy." Epilogue, Claire's perspective. The next time she saw Julian Vance, her heart had never pounded so fiercely. She watched that tall figure, the man in the black trench coat, push his luggage cart toward her. She had thought that 3 years would be enough time for Julian to let go of the past, that she could start pursuing him all over again. However, when he walked past her without a single change in his expression, she was completely stunned. Claire turned her head numbly, seeing the man still walking forward. In that moment, she lost all reason and rushed forward to grab Julian's arm. She could feel his body suddenly stiffen the moment she grabbed him. Then, he turned his head to look at her. His eyes were as calm as a lake, his face devoid of any emotional fluctuation. His voice was cold, his tone steady, his lips parting to utter only 2 words. "What's wrong?" She wanted to answer him, wanted to say so many things, wanted to ask him how he'd been, wanted to ask if he'd ever thought of her. But in the end, she couldn't say a single word, not even the simplest welcome back. Because she knew Julian had returned to participate in a competition, and she was the real investor behind that competition. 3 years. 3 years was too long and arduous. She really couldn't wait any longer, so she could only resort to this method to lure him back. But thinking about it, she could barely endure a 3-year wait. Thinking back to the 7 years they once had, how did Julian endure those 7 years? The more she thought, the sadder she became, the more guilt she felt. In just a few seconds, her mind flashed through too many memories and thoughts, like a movie playing. But in the end, she still couldn't keep Julian. But it didn't matter. Since he was back, she would seize the opportunity to get close to him again. For this reason, she followed Julian relentlessly. She followed him to the group home and heard his conversation with the cab driver. That phrase, "not a good match," really seemed to be about the 2 of them. But it didn't matter. She would do everything she could to turn not a good match into a good match. She waited at the entrance of the group home for a long time but never saw Julian come out. If he hadn't come back before, if she hadn't seen him as he was now, and with the distance between them, she could have surely endured the longing. But things were different now. She had seen him. It was like a person who had always been hidden in the dark. Because they had never seen the light, they could accept the darkness, get used to it. But when a dazzling light momentarily dispels the surrounding darkness and then disappears, the once calm surface of the water is broken. When darkness strikes again, one feels panic, anxiety, and longing, desperate to find the light. She was the one who had hidden in the dark for 3 years, and Julian was her light. Now that she had seen him, She didn't want to let him go again. She kept chasing, getting closer to him. She trespassed into the forbidden place she had sworn never to enter again, yet she always followed behind that person, like a shadow, quietly observing from the dark for half a month. She kept trying to get closer, but was rejected again and again. Until she was on the verge of collapse. Not knowing what to do, she could only choose to break down and cry. Her family gathered around her, patiently and gently asking about her situation. She told them everything without reservation, pleading for everyone to help her again. Her family told her to think about the root of the problem, to think about what he loved most. She knew in her heart, because in the 7 years they spent together, Julian had mentioned it more than once. He would say, "When can we get married? I want to build a home with you, a home that belongs to us." So, he longed for a happy marriage, a happy family. This was exactly what she yearned for in her heart, and what she had once promised. She did something stupid, once again luring him to a place that was advantageous to her. She actually proposed. However, he rejected her decisively, with no room for turning back. She, filled with unwillingness, pressed for a reason, desperate to know why the person who had once loved her so deeply suddenly no longer cherished her, why he had disappeared without a sound. Her heart was full of confusion, brimming with grievance and indignation, but she also knew that what she was currently experiencing was far less than the suffering Julian had endured in those 7 years. Julian seemed to be genuinely angry. It was the first time she had ever seen him lose his temper. He shouted with all his might, venting everything that had happened to him in those 7 years. No wonder he was so furious, so eager to cut ties with her. Just from his words, she could feel her own breathing become difficult, but all these things that made her struggle to breathe were things she had inflicted on him. Julian had been holding on solely because of his love for her. As time went on, one party's love was completely exhausted by the other. Between her and Julian, it was her coldness and neglect that had drained his love for her over 7 years. She had witnessed Julian's love for her. It was so fiery and deep. So when Julian no longer loved her, she could no longer feel anyone else's love, because no one's love could compare to the love Julian had once given her. But sadly, that was all in the past. Now, the only thing she could give Julian was her most sincere blessing. "Julian, may your life be smooth and your happiness complete.